Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Ultimate Harem with Yakumo and Married Her Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Yakumo spent most her time in the forest outside her mansion, painting whatever she felt like. The bittersweet fruit of solitude was still fresh in her mind after the loss of Kurenai-sensei and Naruto. Kurenai had promised to visit her soon but Yakumo knew the truth. She would be forgotten, left behind, abandoned once again because Kurenai now had her own team of genin to look after. So Yakumo Kurama was once again left alone by her so-called mother. And she and Naruto had just been getting close. Yakumo blushed and stopped her painting for a moment. I shouldn't be thinking those thoughts of Naruto-kun. Wait, did I just? Yakumo blushed scarlet even though she knew no one heard her. She was alone, painting the leaves of some local fern in the forest around her. Her fold-up wooden chair creaked as she laid her head back, arms resting behind her head. She blushed again because this was just what Naruto would do when standing up. That blonde had saved her from her own demon and then stopped her from committing suicide with the very palette knife she was using to paint. She would be forever grateful. Admit it, you are falling for him. Yakumo blushed Aegean. Though she would never admit it to that little voice in her head, she knew she was, even though it had only been a day. Something just told her to go after him. Naruto was told he had the next 3 weeks off. This can't be happening, it has to be a prank. Naruto went straight to Grandma Tsunade to demand an explanation. He found her sleeping on her desk, again. Grinning, he formed the hand sign for the shadow clone jutsu and got the clone to wake up the grumpy Hokage. As expected, her fist lashed out and dispelled the clone. Naruto then asked his questions very loudly. Did she think he wasn't an adequate shinobi? Had he screwed up somewhere on a mission and was now paying for it? The barrage of questions Naruto was launching at Tsunade was giving her a headache. She quickly dealt with the cause of the headache and punched Naruto through a window. She then took out her secret stash of sake and drank the headache away. Now what was he supposed to do? Pervy Sage hadn't come back yet and most of his friends were on missions. The only ones that weren't on missions were Kurenai's team since they had the same holiday he had. Naruto grimaced and set out to find them. Yakumo wasn't bored, yet. So long as there were objects to paint she would never be bored. But she was lonely. She was particularly craving the attention of a certain blonde-haired shinobi. I hope he visits me. Maybe I'll really show him my home. This time without trying to kill him. Her home was what Yakumo now called the Kurama clan's mansion. Yeah right, a clan of one person. Yakumo blinked and picked up the brush again. The painting of the fern was nearly complete and once it was she would be bored. Shino had disappeared to look for more insects to study. Or that's at least what Shino's father had told him, so the information looked pretty accurate to Naruto. He left the Aburame clan complex and was now jumping across rooftops towards the Hyuga complex. Before Naruto even got close he spotted Hinata training with her father Hiyashi. Not wanting to disturb her training, and feeling too restless to watch, Naruto left to find Kiba. No go there too. Kiba and Akamaru were practicing their dynamic marking technique in the forest. This involved Akamaru urinating everywhere. I mean what the hell? No one's ever going to go near those two again. Yakumo heard the sound of laughter and a dog barking nearby. Good, she had just finished painting the fern and if they were the pair she thought they were then she would go say hi. Yakumo stood up off her chair and her legs nearly buckled. Damn this weak body. No taijutsu was possible, no teacher in ninjutsu and no one seemed to care about her genjutsu. And now she couldn't even see old friends because of her body. She felt worse than useless. The whole world had moved on, leaving her behind to pick up the pieces of her life. Hey, Yakumo. Yakumo's head turned and her usually stoic mouth broke into a radiant smile. Naruto, I thought you had forgotten about me. Yakumo turned and waved, the simple act causing her to fall on her bum. Naruto kept running to help her up. Skidding to a stop in front of her, Naruto managed to spray mud into her hair. Are you alright, Yakumo? Here, let me help you up. Still grinning, Naruto held out his hand. I wonder if he even cares about me. Maybe he did that on purpose. She looked into his eyes, knew he hadn't. Seeing his smile again made Yakumo wonder how she'd ever thought such a terrible thing of Naruto. She took his offered hand and he pulled her up. Yet again her legs refused to cooperate and she fell, this time forwards and into Naruto's chest. She gasped and blushed like mad, pushing herself off of his chest, but not before spotting the similar blush on his cheeks. What are you doing here, Naruto? Are you looking for Kiba? She knew better than to hope that he wasn't. Nope. I was looking for you, he said, this time smiling with a faint blush. Inside, Yakumo was doing a little jig. He cares, he cares, he cares. Her face remained friendly but neutral, silently asking the question, why? Naruto grinned, blushing a little bit. Well, we have a 3-week holiday. All of us, Shino, Kurenai, Kiba, Hinata and myself. Yakumo did not miss the faint edge of anger over the word, holiday. Apparently Naruto doesn't like holidays. Still, it didn't answer my question of why he is here. Everyone else is training, so I thought, what am I horrible at? Genjutsu was the answer. And who is the prettiest, nicest genjutsu master I have ever seen? Yakumo sighed. He was looking for Kurenai-sensei. Yakumo knew that people thought of her as Kurenai-sensei's daughter, almost, so Naruto was here to ask her if she had seen Kurenai, not because he cared about her. It was too good a fantasy to be true anyway. Naruto finished. Blank. No expression. Emotionless. Did he just call me pretty? Prettier than even Kurenai-sensei. Oh Kami, what do I say? She got the biggest blush on her face and finally stammered out, ah. Thank you for the compliment. Naruto-kun. Shit, did I just call him Naruto-kun? Crap, maybe he didn't hear me. But are you sure you want me to teach you, Naruto? I mean, what about Kurenai-sensei? She would have better access to scrolls to teach you and she is a Jonin. No, why am I saying this? I'm craving his company, yet I'm trying to push him away. Fortunately for Yakumo, Naruto was a very stubborn knuckle-headed ninja who never gave up pestering the people he wanted something from. Oh, common Yakumo, don't you want to be called Yakumo-sensei? Yakumo blinked. Yakumo-sensei. She liked the sound of that. But it sounds wrong coming from someone a year older than me. Tell you what, Naruto-kun. You call me Yakumo-sensei if I can call you Naruto-kun, deal? Deal, Naruto said before picking up Yakumo bridal style and speeding back to her mansion, Yakumo screaming all the way. Naruto-kun, I need my palette knife and canvas. I left them behind in the forest. Yakumo was still short of breath and she was blushing madly. She wasn't used to moving that fast. Or being carried by my Naruto-kun. Crap, I'm starting to sound like Hinata. Don't worry, Yakumo-sensei. My shadow clones brought your painting things here. He wasn't even short of breath. Yakumo bristled. Things. Naruto Uzumaki. Those things were the only friends I had when Kurenai sealed my powers and abandoned me. They are beautiful tools, and as such shall be treated with respect, just like Kunai or Senbon. Naruto froze and blinked. Then blinked again. Not only had she used his last name with no kun, she also didn't add sensei after Kurenai's name. She must be serious. A foxy grin crept up on his face. Time to kill the mood. Hi, Yakumo-sensei. Please forgive my insolence. A genin of your caliber and experience should not be underestimated. Naruto straightened his back and raised his hand in a mock salute. Yakumo's eyebrow twitched. Once, Twice. Naruto's sweat dropped. She finally burst out laughing, her chocolate hair obscuring her face while she clutched her knees to stop herself from falling on her bum again. It was brilliant. Yakumo couldn't resist a counterattack. Oh, all-powerful, Konoha Ninja Naruto, forgive me. She was having trouble saying the words because she was laughing so hard. It's not like an orange jumpsuit, wearing knucklehead, could understand art. She finally looked up, expecting Naruto to start laughing any second, but her laughter died in her throat. Oh no, Naruto-kun, you better not be thinking that. Yakumo-sensei, will you teach me an art? Oh 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 oh. The following week passed in much the same manner. Naruto would start a conversation with a question, Yakumo would end the conversation by answering the question, and then Naruto would start a new conversation by asking a question about something Yakumo had said in the previous answer. It was a complex game of cat and mouse, and Yakumo thought she was the mouse. But it was interesting playing his game. Naruto displayed a genuine interest in Yakumo's life, often asking questions about it and seeing in which direction the conversation would go. Most of their time, however, was spent trying to find an art for Naruto, rather than practicing any said art on Naruto's part. Yakumo taught Naruto that any form of art would help them later when they used their art to form genjutsu. That first week passed in a blur of happiness for Yakumo. She had gone from being alone and depressed to feeling wonderfully alive, thanks to Naruto. She shared her passions, dreams and fears with Naruto without a care in the world. She told him that she aspired to become the most powerful kunoichi in the Leaf Village using nothing more than genjutsu. Naruto's talks were constantly fueling her ambition and fanning her will of fire. With his constant encouragement and never-ending trust in her abilities, it came as no surprise that Yakumo became more and more attached to him. She couldn't help it. Naruto would use the example of Rock Lee constantly in their talks, the same example Yakumo had used on Kurenai-sensei. Naruto had been shocked when Yakumo told him what Kurenai had said to her. He even displayed a rare trace of anger, saying it was far too similar to the destiny speech of Neji. Naruto promptly told Yakumo that what Kurenai said was bull, confirming her suspicions of the fact. He then told her the story of himself, Neji and Rock Lee. How Lee was always improving himself to beat Neji, and Neji would always tell him that destiny was against him and that he was always destined to lose because he was born a loser. When Yakumo heard this, she was fuming. Lee, Kurenai-sensei and now Naruto-kun were her role models, and this pompous ass was going around crushing all their dreams. Maybe she would capture him in a very special genjutsu. Naruto continued by telling her about Neji's speech in the Chunin exam and Naruto's speech after he had beaten him. After hearing that Naruto had beaten Neji, Yakumo demanded a blow by blow. Naruto was always up for bragging about his accomplishments. In this he has no equal and only one better, Kiba. It seems that the role of student and teacher were reversed with Yakumo and Naruto throughout that first week. Though Naruto did not learn any genjutsu, the first week served to ease the tension and break the ice between the two near strangers as well as the constant search for Naruto's art. Naruto was found less and less in the village, stopping only at Ichiraku Ramen for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Ayame especially noticed the difference in Naruto, and not just his clothes. After that jab about his jumpsuit, Naruto had changed his clothing into something more reasonable. Wearing a tight black t-shirt with a matching pair of black knee-high shorts, Ayame had to admit that it was a big improvement. The shorts had orange outlines around the pockets and two stripes of orange going down each side of the shorts. The t-shirt also had two orange lines going down each arm. Naruto's kunai pouch was still tied to his waist. My, he looks very handsome. Ayame blushed at her thoughts while she watched Naruto eat. He still eats ramen with gusto, at least that hasn't changed. Ayame grinned. Naruto was on his 10th bowl already. Naruto just couldn't bring himself change completely. And lose all traces of orange. Ayame giggled at that last thought. It was a definite improvement in his dress code. After finishing his ramen, Naruto paid a yame and sprinted out of the stand. Yakumo had told him this morning that every time he left her she was scared he wouldn't come back. That she'd be left behind and forgotten, all alone again. Flashback. Naruto sped towards the Kurama mansion, jumping from rooftop to rooftop. Today was day 7, the last day they would spend just talking while practicing their art for fun. He'd already stopped at Ichiraku Ramen for breakfast and was now heading to the forest just outside the village. He knew Yakumo was waiting there for him, bright-eyed and grumpy as hell. A true smile crept onto Naruto's lips as he headed into the forest. He couldn't wait to see Yakumo-chan again, not that she'd allow him to call her that. But a man can hope. When he got there he found that Yakumo wasn't in the forest. Not one to be discouraged, Naruto figured she'd still be in bed in her mansion. Naruto smiled. He was going to wake her up, unpleasantly. He arrived to see a heart-wrenching sight. Yakumo was sitting on the front porch outside her mansion, head on her knees, crying silently. Naruto ran towards her, not caring that she might want to be alone. He sat down next to her and asked her what was wrong. He waited and waited for a response, never groaning, pressurizing her to answer. Yakumo finally looked up and Naruto wondered where that brown-haired, emotionless zombie had gone. And whether he preferred her like this, so sad and unhappy. Yakumo spoke, her voice wavering, like she was going to cry again. Naruto-kun, don't leave me. Sob, I don't want to be alone anymore. Naruto tilted his head to look at her with his sapphire eyes. What do you mean, Yakumo-sensei? I will never leave you. Don't lie to me. Naruto-kun, after the 3 weeks are over, you will leave. You sniffle have a squad, and you need to do missions. You'll just forget about me. Oh. Naruto pulled Yakumo into a tight hug, burying his face into her brown hair. Her hair smells like chocolate. I'll never leave her. My Yakumo-chan. Not even thinking about what he was doing, Naruto removed himself from Yakumo's hair and tilted her chin up to look at him. Her brown hair was over her eyes, the pair of yellow beads having fallen out of her hair. Her mouth, not quite quivering but still showing her unhappiness to Naruto. Her brow was creasing with worry. All Naruto knew was that he had to take her pain away. His head descended, and their lips touched. His, dry yet tender, hers, wet and unsure. None of them were prepared for Yakumo's reaction when he kissed her. Yakumo lost control and flung her small hands around Naruto's neck. When he tried to pull away, Yakumo used this action to pull herself onto Naruto's lap, never breaking the kiss that was her lifeline. He tried to protest, only for Yakumo to deepen the kiss. In the end he couldn't help it. With a young female kissing him on his lap, his body began to betray him. No. No. This is so wrong, she's 12. Hey, old enough to kill, old enough for other things too. Shut up, fox, no one asked you. Naruto's hands made their way to the small of her back, pulling her into his body. Her tongue went into his mouth completely by accident, with her trying to deepen the kiss further and Naruto pulling her closer. She liked this new feeling, this pleasurable desire. Her wet tongue inside his moist mouth increased those feelings. She wanted those feelings to burn through her until the sadness and loneliness was nothing but a memory. Naruto's hands grasped her shirt and pulled her back, ending the makeout session, much to her disappointment. Naruto was having trouble resisting this young girl, but in the end he was able to pull her mouth away from his. His eyes went over her flushed cheeks, her wild hair and her bare neck. That last part of her sent Naruto over the edge. A growl came from his throat and he bit her neck hard enough to draw blood. Then he sucked on it like it was candy. Yakumo had never felt this before. His hands were pulling at the back of her shirt, making it tight against her chest. When his teeth had sunk into her young neck, she felt oversensitive and vulnerable. There was pain, but when he began sucking on her neck the pain turned into arousal. Her small were pressing against her fishnet shirt beneath her robes, nipples hardening in arousal. Naruto clawed himself back from the depths of sin, Leaning over, he whispered into her ear. Yakumo-chan, I'll never leave you. He sucked on her earlobe and Yakumo gasped. He then whispered, with a trace of lust. Soon, you will call me sensei. Flashback end. That incident was the first close physical contact Yakumo had experienced, besides the hug Kurenai had given her after they killed Yakumo's demon. It was her first kiss, make-out, and her first encounter with lust. Naruto held her all morning, whispering comforting words like, Yakumo-chan, and, don't cry. After that run-in with lust, both of them agreed to act like it had never happened. Naruto promised to never leave her out of his own free will, and Yakumo was content. Now Naruto made his way through the forest, sensing before he seeing that Yakumo was painting there. Grinning, he looked over her shoulder to see what she was painting. Naruto blushed red as a tomato upon seeing the painting. It was them, Naruto biting Yakumo's neck while his hands pulled her robes back against her chest. Her eyes were wide and her mouth half open in a silent moan of ecstasy. Oh Kami, was I really doing that to her? But that's so hot, and no, Naruto, this is wrong. So wrong. It feels so wrong, it must be right. Shut up. You're not funny. So Naruto-kun, what do you think of the painting? Dry throat. Naruto started sweating bullets as cleared his throat, trying to think of a good answer. Well, Yakumo-sensei, it's very passionate. Yakumo brows knitted together at Naruto's comment, trying to hold back her laughter while appearing to be hurt by Naruto's comment. Oh crap, I'm dead, Naruto thought. Yakumo couldn't hold it any longer and she burst out laughing. Naruto's expression of terror too cute. After getting her laughter out of her system, Yakumo stood up and walked around her chair. She was looking positively maleficent at Naruto. I hope I can paint more of these. Naruto-kun. She whispered in his ear, causing shivers to race down Naruto's spine. Naruto wanted to show Yakumo his favorite part of the village. Pulling her onto his back, he gave her the fastest piggyback ride she'd ever experienced. Yakumo's hands tightened around Naruto's shoulders. They'd originally been around his neck, but Yakumo had been slowly choking Naruto to death and he'd told her that. Her hands had lowered and now her hands gripped the material of his t-shirt for dear life as Naruto jumped over rooftops and climbed near vertical cliffs, much to Yakumo's terror. She wondered if Naruto was getting her back for the painting. It made the most sense, but since when did Naruto do something predictable? Never. The sun was beginning to set when they arrived at their destination, on top of the Hokage monuments. Land, sweet land, Yakumo said while slipping off Naruto's back. She landed on all fours and kissed the mercifully level ground beneath them. When she looked up, the maleficent look had returned. Naruto. Sounding more like Sakura at the moment, Yakumo stood up with surprisingly little effort and hit Naruto on the head. It seemed that just like Sakura, her anger gave her super strength. You baka. If you ever pull a stunt like this again, I'll make a gay rape genjutsu and put you in it for a week. Naruto winced. Shit, she could do it too. Have to reveal my trump card. Naruto looked again at the setting sun, then looked at the leaf village sprawled beneath the Hokage monuments. Pointing at the village, Naruto gave Yakumo the simplest of commands. Look. She did, and she gasped. The fiery red sun reflected off all the rooftops of the village, bathing it in an orange glow that reflected off every rooftop. Yakumo looked further and further, the orange glow and tint was everywhere. It was the most beautiful thing the young girl had seen, and she cried silently at her life. Her parents killed by the demon inside of her, never really stepping out of the mansion after their house burned to the ground. Witnessing her first real sunset with someone only now, at the age of 12, spoke volumes about her life. Naruto turned away from the sunset and looked at Yakumo. Seeing that she was crying, Naruto gave her a sympathetic look, which she unfortunately didn't see. Naruto walked up behind Yakumo and slipped his arms around her waist and hugged her from behind. She gasped as he buried his face in the crook of her neck. Yakumo stopped crying as Naruto just held her, whispering the same comforting words as before. Her shoulders stopped shaking as Naruto rested his head on her right shoulder, and they both looked at the leaf village glowing in the sunset. Oh 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 oh. When the sun had finally set on the most amazing day of Yakumo's life, Naruto took her back to the mansion. She still didn't view the mansion as her home died with her parents. But maybe I can start over, with Naruto-kun. Naruto carried her bridal style all the way to the mansion, jumping through rooftops and treetops alike, finally arriving through the window and depositing Yakumo on her soft bed. Naruto bade her goodnight and turned to leave, but Yakumo flung herself at him before he could pull away. Tightening her hold on his shirt, Yakumo pulled Naruto on top of her and kissed his cheek. She then whispered in his ear, "Thank you, Naruto-kun. You have been so kind to me and, Naruto had never seen Yakumo sound so unsure of what she was going to say next. He waited patiently for her to finish though, holding his tongue. Naruto was blushing something fierce when he realized the position they were in, Naruto laying on top of Yakumo with Yakumo whispering into his left ear. Never mind. Naruto face faulted. However, Yakumo's hands subconsciously tightened on Naruto's t-shirt. Her inner thoughts were, he doesn't feel the same way about me. But there was that kiss. He was just feeling sorry for me. But he did give me the kiss. I had nothing to do with that. I'll wait a few more days before telling him my feelings. Okay. Yakumo-sensei, are you sure you are alright? Yeah, but Naruto-kun, I want you to stay with me tonight. Naruto blushed heavily and nodded at Yakumo, attempting to get off of her and stay in the spare bedroom. Yakumo giggled. Oh no, you don't, Naruto-kun. Yakumo pulled him tighter against her and pressed her body against his, earning a low moan from him as her supple body made contact with his. Naruto-kun, you are going to sleep here tonight, with me. Okay, my Naruto-kun. Those last three words were whispered in Naruto's ear with a pinch of lust. Naruto grinned. Two can play at this game. Naruto used his weight to sit on top of Yakumo's waist. His two legs were kneeling on either side of Yakumo's waist, pinning her down. His hands broke Yakumo's vice-like grip on his shirt while he raised his upper body up until it was vertical. His hands traveled down to the hem of his shirt. Naruto slowly removed his shirt, revealing his chest to Yakumo. Yakumo was now the one blushing as Naruto leant back down and captured her lips with his. His hands guided her smooth arms around his back, while his lips never broke the kiss. Yakumo's arms tightened around Naruto as his tongue willingly brushed over her teeth, asking to be let in. Yakumo's oversensitive body betrayed her with a moan as she let his tongue in her mouth. Naruto's hands moved the sheet and duvet covers beneath them. Getting into the sheets, Naruto finally broke away from her mouth and began giving her butterfly kisses on her neck, knowing it was her weak point. Yakumo-sensei. Say it. Say what's been bothering you. Every few words Naruto would give Yakumo a light kiss on her neck, slowly moving lower. She couldn't take it any longer and decided to come clean with him. While Naruto's mouth was busy with her neck, his arms were wandering over Yakumo's body, tracing lines of fire through her clothes. Kami, I love this. He's making me feel so good. Oh. Naruto's mouth had reached its lowest point of her exposed neck and he had bitten her there. At the same time his hands cupped her bum and gave them a squeeze. Her eyes snapped shut and her mouth flew open as she wrote out this feeling. Come on, Yakumo-chan, say it. Naruto said again, this time in a playful voice. Yakumo thought it was time to come clean with Naruto. Oh, Kami, I love you, Naruto. Yakumo blurted out after hearing him refer to her as Chan. Silence so profound so could hear a pin drop. Naruto removed his face and hands from Yakumo and looked her straight in the eye. Did you really mean that, Yakumo? Yakumo was suddenly very scared. He doesn't feel the same way, that's why he asked. Naruto, I know you'll never feel the same way I do, but it's true, I do. Anything she was about to say was stopped when Naruto's mouth kissed hers with fervor. His left hand grabbed both of Yakumo's wrists and held them above her head, against the mattress and pillows. Yakumo had never felt a kiss this intense. She felt her mouth been ravaged by Naruto's wet tongue inside her. Her arms tried to move but they were pinned down by his left arm. Yakumo realized what Naruto was doing. By removing the use of her arms, the only way she could display her affection and appreciation was with her mouth. So she moaned into the kiss and rubbed her body against his, hard. His dominating ways of showing affection were slowly making her more and more wet between her legs, but bin 12 she didn't know what was happening save that it had something to do with lust. Her eyes traveled over his shirtless body and a little more wetness appeared. Removing their lips only to check each other out and catch their breath, they continued way into the night. Oh 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 oh. Yakumo woke up in the morning with the biggest smile she ever had. Naruto loved her, she was sure of that now. He loved her like she always had loved him. Speak of the devil, where was that little knucklehead? She could feel that he wasn't in the bed with her nor could she detect his presence in the mansion. Beginning to panic she jumped out of bed and was about to run out to look for him when she saw a note left for her, stuck to the closed door with a kunai. Gone training. This week has been perfect but I don't want to fall behind Kiba and the others. Left you a shopping list to go into the village with. No complaining you need the exercise sexy. I'll be back in time for dinner. Love Naruto. Yakumo giggled. No one had ever called her before. She'd never had a boyfriend either. She was as clueless as Naruto as to how fast things should go. They were both running on instinct. And instinct told her that she liked what happened last night. And she wanted more. His other statement was true as well. She never had much exercise after Kurenai sealed her powers and abandoned. A trip to the market in Konoha would be worth the effort. Yakumo turned the note over and on it was a list of basic groceries she needed as well as 50 orders of instant ramen. Bending over, Yakumo picked up the necessary cash on the floor and grinned at the thought of Naruto. Only Naruto would be kind enough to pay for the groceries when she owned a mansion and a colossal inheritance. I've never been clothes shopping though, maybe I should try. Oh 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 oh. Yakumo watched the crowds of villagers clog up the paths and roads of the market district. There must have been over 100 stands and shops just where she could see. Where am I going to find a decent clothing store in a place like this? I'll ask around. Yakumo looked around the market, trying to find a girl her age to ask for help. She spotted a pretty, blonde-haired kunoichi in the mix of people in the crowd. Yakumo smiled and made a beeline towards her, hoping she could give her some fashion tips. Ino had arrived home from another C-rank mission yesterday. After resting up yesterday and this morning Ino was just standing around thinking about what clothes she could buy to get Sasuke-kun to like he over forehead girl. A girl about a year younger than her snapped her out of her thoughts and asked her directions to a good clothing store for women. Ino, never the one to deny clothes shopping, told the girl they'd go clothes shopping together. So, 1.5 hours later, which is short for girls' clothes shopping. 2 females left the store, hands full of clothes. Ino had been surprised when her young friend said that the cost of her clothes didn't matter and Ino wondered who she was. She'd obviously had no clue about fashion nowadays and continuously asked Ino for assistance in that department. What kind of girl has unlimited funds but who's never been in a clothing store? Ino silently wondered. The girl thanked her and finally told her that her name was Yakumo. After Ino introduced herself as a kunoichi she asked Yakumo why she wanted all those nice clothes. Yakumo blushed and said that she wanted to look good for her boyfriend, even though she didn't have as good-looking body as Ino. Now Ino was interested and asked Yakumo who her boyfriend was. Yakumo's blush deepened and she said something that sounded suspiciously like, Naruto-kun. Ino blinked and then she began to laugh. Naruto? Dating this girl? Absurd. Yakumo got angry at this girl for laughing at her Naruto-kun and decided to give this Ino bitch a life-changing experience. She knew about the story of her and Sakura fighting for Sasuke, and she liked Sakura better because she was there with Naruto-kun. Dropping her bags of clothes, Yakumo took out a blank, pocket-sized canvas from her robe's inner pocket. She then unsealed a brush and ink and sat down on the street. Ino looked at Yakumo like she was crazy, but Yakumo paid her no mind. Naruto had once asked her why she didn't create a black and white genjutsu, just for kicks. It was a lot quicker than painting, but it was far less real. A real, time versus quality, situation. She dipped her brush in ink and began drawing on the canvas. Ino was shocked at how quickly Yakumo could draw and secretly wondered what she was drawing. Yakumo quickly finished the black and white picture on her small, pocket-sized canvas. She threw it up into the air to distract Ino and formed some hand signs. She didn't usually need hand signs, but she wanted this genjutsu to only affect Ino. Finishing the rapid hand signs barely a second after she started, Yakumo started the genjutsu. Ino didn't know what was happening. 1 second she was watching Yakumo paint and the next she was in Sakura's house. But everything was black and white. It was so strange for Ino and she began to panic. Suddenly she started hearing strange sounds coming from the upstairs bedroom. Knowing it was Sakura's bedroom, Ino temporarily forgot that she was in a black and white world and went to investigate. Those strange sounds turned into moans, and there was a different sound, like flesh hitting flesh. Ino opened the door of Sakura's bedroom like she was possessed and witnessed her deepest fear. Sasuke was on Sakura's bed, on top of Sakura. She had a good view of Sakura's face as Sasuke thrust into her again and again. Her eyes were closed and there was a lewd smile on her lips. She obviously loved every minute of it. Every now and then and loud moan escaped Sakura's lips and her nether lips squirted more juice over Sasuke's perfect body. No! Ino screamed and the vision changed. She was outdoors, wearing a bridesmaid dress and listening to a classic wedding song. She looked up the aisle and there was Sasuke looking perfect in a tux. Here Comes the Bride started playing and she followed everyone as they looked down the aisle. And saw Sakura, in a wedding dress and been escorted, arm in arm, by a grinning Naruto. No! Ino screamed and the vision changed again. Yakumo grinned at the sleeping Ino. She'd continue living through all memorable moments of Sasuke's and Sakura's life together. Over and over until the genjutsu ended. Yakumo suddenly started laughing so hard the tears came and the nearby villagers took a step away from her. A few minutes later Yakumo remembered that she also had to go grocery shopping with Naruto's money before he came back for dinner. By looking at the sun she guessed it was around 1:00. Yakumo decided to have lunch at Naruto's favorite ramen bar before grocery shopping, leaving Ino on the street. Tuki and Ayame rarely served an unknown customer like this young, brown-haired girl. The short girl walked in with the biggest smile and an even bigger pile of filled clothing bags. She asked for 1 bowl of diet ramen, look up filler episode lol. And another 30 bowls is miso ramen to go. When Tuki heard his favorite customer's ramen to go he became curious as to the little girl's identity. Excuse me girl, but is that order for a young man named Naruto? Yes, I guess he's my boyfriend. Crash. Tuki had fainted. Ayame walked out of the kitchen and through the door. She served Yakumo her diet ramen and gave her all the miso ramen to go a little later. After smiling at the young girl, Ayame turned around and stepped on her father. She yelled and turned back to Yakumo, who was calmly finishing her ramen. What happened? She asked the girl with a faint trace of panic. He fainted when I told him that I was Naruto's boyfriend. Crash. Ayame had fainted on top of Tuki. Yakumo giggled before finishing her diet ramen. Luckily she'd brought along some storage scrolls, which she used to seal away all her shopping and the takeaway ramen. Sighing, she prepared to go grocery shopping, the bane of any couple's lives together. One thought that cheered her up was that Ino had it far worse than her right now. The moment Ino started believing it was in color or forgot that it was black and white and therefore was not real, the illusion would appear in color and then there was no hope of escape. She would be trapped in the genjutsu until someone used their own chakra to break it. Yakumo was nearly skipping to the grocery store. Oh 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 oh. It happened that afternoon. While Yakumo was walking home, she passed the Hokage Tower and was surprised to hear raised voices coming from the top of the tower. Something about the way they were raised told Yakumo that a fight might break out. Wanting to help the Hokage, she quickly made the hand signs for an invisibility genjutsu. It wasn't one of her paintings, still, nothing short of the Byakugan or Kurenai sensei should be able to break it. Certainly none of this Anbu trash will be able to see through it, Yakumo thought, and had her theory confirmed when she walked past the two Anbu guarding the entrance of the Hokage Tower. I shouldn't be doing this. Must be Naruto's influence on me. Yakumo's fears were confirmed when she found that the higher up the tower she went, the louder the voices became. Finally stopping outside door to the Hokage's office, Yakumo hesitated before putting her ear to the door. The voices became that much clearer and Yakumo began following the conversation. We cannot allow it, Hokage. If the demon container is allowed to breed with another, what kind of hellspawn will they give birth to? Senior Councilman, enough. Naruto is just as human as you and me, and if so much as speak those words again, all. We thought you would be of that opinion. Now hear this, we have sent an assassin after Naruto. What? And we regret to inform you that the council, under the powers granted to us by the third, has overruled any attempt of rescue by yourself or subordinates. Failure to comply will result in the immediate removal of your position of Hokage. Yakumo began running the moment she heard that the Hokage couldn't stop the assassin. Kami help the Leaf Village if Naruto was killed by this assassin. What did they mean by demon container though? I had the Edo demon inside me. Does Naruto have an Edo demon inside him too? Yakumo shook her head as the tears began to fall. It doesn't matter. No one will hurt my Naruto-kun. I don't care if this body's weak anymore, I will save my Naruto. Yakumo pushed her weak body to the limits. Her muscles burned but she didn't feel them. Her feet hurt from the jarring impact of her sandals on the stone path, but she didn't feel them either. Yakumo looked at the position of the sun and the cogs in her mind began working. He said he would be catching up on his training today, and that he'd come back home at around this time. Oh no, if the assassin attacks when he has just gotten home, he won't be strong enough to fight him off. I have to move quickly. In Yakumo's heart she knew that she was too late. Naruto stumbled into the mansion. He was spending more time in here than his old apartment, not that he regretted anything. Going from a solo, poor existence in an apartment to living in a mansion with a girlfriend was a real big upgrade in his lifestyle. Naruto dumped his stuff on the kitchen table and downed a glass of water from the kitchen sink. Sighing, Naruto fell asleep on the cool, tiled floor of the kitchen. The assassin waited for her moment to strike, making sure her target was indeed asleep. That's right, the assassin was a she. How amusing that she would assassinate her best friend's ex-student. Not that it mattered anymore. Nothing mattered after the third had died and left her alone, again. A cookie for you if you can guess who it is. She only wished that things could have been different. Serving the council seemed to be the only way to get them to accept her, and she was tired of all the shit people gave her. She raised her right arm and 4 snakes came out of her sleeves. They slithered through the open kitchen window and onto the kitchen table before lowering themselves onto the tiled floor. The snakes were still coming out of her sleeve as Anko watched them close in on Naruto. Goodbye, Naruto Uzumaki. The 4 snakes lunged at Naruto. Their fangs fastened to his wrists as they pumped their deadly venom into the 13-year-old boy. Poof. A shadow clone. Anko felt the cold touch of death as a kunai pierced her back. Who are you? A familiar voice asked without a trace of warmth. How did he get outside so quickly, without me sensing him? The kunai dug deeper into her back to stress the seriousness of the situation. Anko smiled. You did good, Naruto, she said, her most sultry voice, knowing it would identify her instantly. Snake bitch. Psychotic second Chunin exam proctor, Anko. Why are you trying to kill me? Or do you just do that for fun? Anko was shocked. Naruto really thought she was that fucked up. Well, then there was no hope left for her. Might as well come clean to the kid. Naruto, the council sent me here to assassinate you. They don't want you to breed, as they are calling it, with a girl named Yakumo. Anko waited for a violent response. She wasn't disappointed. Do they only see me as some kind of fucking animal? Naruto yelled and pulled the kunai out of Anko's back. Anko winced at the pain before she turned around to answer Naruto's question. No, Naruto, they don't even see you as that. They see you as a demon, a pest, an ugly reminder of things long past. And they overruled the Hokage from helping you. Grandma Tsunade is still trying to help me. Good. Then she'll take care of it. No, she won't, Naruto. Both Naruto and Anko turned to see an out-of-breath Yakumo come to a running stop in between Anko and Naruto. She was panting heavily with her hands on her knees. If the Hokage interferes, she loses her title. The council members used a dirty trick. The third gave the council more power to make his job of being Hokage easier. Only now with the fifth in power they don't want to give that power up again. Yakumo finally registered who Anko was and began forming hand signs. You won't hurt my Naruto-kun. The Genjutsu Yakumo cast was a perfected version of Kurenai-sensei's favorite genjutsu, which made Anko relive her deepest fears over and over. Yakumo didn't stay long enough to find out what the assassin's deepest fear was, choosing to grab Naruto instead and pull him into the mansion through the back kitchen door. Once she determined that they were safe, Yakumo broke down crying in Naruto's arms. When, Naruto? When will we be free of the cursed village? Is this village really worth it? Yakumo had no idea the effect those words had on Naruto. Flashback. Naruto was sitting alone in an old, rundown park, silently swinging on a nearly broken swing. It was late afternoon on October the 10th, young Naruto's 6th birthday. But he'd learnt the hard way to stay out of sight on his birthday. But Naruto needed to eat, even if it was only at Ichiraku Ramen. And that meant being seen by the villagers and probably getting beaten up. Naruto groaned at the thought of receiving another beating, only for his stomach to groan louder. Naruto resigned himself to do the inevitable and ran out of the abandoned park towards the marked district of Konoha. Needless to say, the inevitable happened and Naruto was beaten to a bloody mess. The third had arrived just in time to stop a man who had drawn a knife at Naruto, shouting, "Die, demon!" End flashback. It was not the only painful memory. There was dozens, no, hundreds of memories similar or even worse than that memory. But now Yakumo's words appeared and asked that same question over and over in Naruto's mind. Is this village really worth it? Did this village deserve his protection? He wanted to be Hokage, but only to protect his precious people, not the village. The logical part of his mind answered with an instant, no. When will we be free of this cursed village? Tonight. Right now. No. Within the week though. Yakumo would have affairs that need to be taken care of and Naruto would need to say his goodbyes. Naruto clutched his head as all the changes in his perception of the world began to show. This village never really loved me, or cared for me. And they never will, because of the Kyuubi inside of me. Finally, after being a dumb, blonde knucklehead for too long, Naruto snapped. When Yakumo had said those words, she had wanted to be comforted by Naruto. She did mean every word, make no mistake about that, but she knew their situation was hopeless. The council would continue sending assassins after them until Naruto was dead or Tsunade was forced to do something drastic. After Naruto told Yakumo about the old hag, she was at a loath to let any harm befall her. Anyone who defended her Naruto-kun from the council was a saint in her books. But after she said those words, he had froze. A few moments later, Naruto fell to his knees, clutching his head in agony. Think crazy Gaara. When Yakumo saw Naruto on his knees clutching his head in apparent agony, she panicked a little. She began comforting Naruto as best she could, with hugs and light kisses. Yakumo's comfort cemented Naruto's transformation and the pain in his head finally ceased. Slowly Naruto looked up from his crouching position on the kitchen floor, and gazed upon the face of an angel. But his brown-haired angel was crying. Why was she crying? It didn't matter. He would make the pain go away the same way she took care of his. Standing up suddenly, he flung his arms around Yakumo's waist and pulled her into his chest. His left hand clutched a handful of her hair and pulled her head back, giving her a feeling of déjà vu. Naruto's hand lifted her head and he kissed Yakumo far too aggressively. Each time she tried to adapt, he'd change the way he kissed. Her mouth felt ravaged and her mind was beginning to shut down. Naruto's left hand stayed clutching her hair, holding it almost roughly. Yakumo was standing on her tiptoes because Naruto didn't lean down into these kisses, making it even more uncomfortable for Yakumo. Naruto's right hand descended below her sash and into her robes, making Yakumo gasp and try to pull away. His hand touched the bare skin of her lower chest, feeling how firm her petite body was. It traveled lower, down to her panties, making Yakumo moan into the tongue kiss Naruto was giving her. His middle finger rubbed her nether regions through her panties until it naturally slipped between her wet folds, now swollen. The kind of dirty pleasure Yakumo was feeling now could no longer be described, only experienced. She knew it was immoral. She was only 12, but if this was what people older than her experienced, then Kami be damned, she wasn't going to resist. Logic had left her young mind long ago as she began to grind herself into his finger. Her panties were soaked through, but that seemed to make both Yakumo and Naruto more aggressive. Naruto's middle finger stopped rubbing her clit and this made Yakumo groan in frustration, thinking that he was finished. That was until his middle finger slipped past her panty and directly on her flesh. Until it stopped rubbing and thrust itself into Yakumo's hot core. Naruto broke the kiss just to hear Yakumo's reaction. Oh, don't put it there. Oh, Kami Naruto, ooh. Suddenly her robes and sash were too hot, too restricting. Her hands removed themselves from Naruto's neck and undid the sash around her waist. Pulling her robes open, Yakumo leant back onto Naruto's finger, her waist moving up and down, pleasuring herself on his finger. Naruto's searing gaze looked Yakumo over. Her white robes were open, exposing her white, wire mesh shirt tight against her. Think Anko. Except Yakumo's is white instead of brown, the skin-tight wire mesh shirt ended just above her waist. Naruto's gaze went lower. Her white, cotton panty was pushed sideways and by Naruto's finger. A finger that Yakumo was now bouncing up and down on, screaming her love for the activity. Yakumo's back arched, presenting the wire mesh containing her small into Naruto's face. Ah, Naruto. Juices rushed out of her, covering Naruto's right hand before running down his right arm. Naruto just smirked before capturing her in another searing kiss. Yakumo-chan, we'll leave this village soon. Trust me. Always Naruto-kun. Always. Yakumo passed out with a smile on her face. Naruto lifted her now limp and wet form and carried her to their bed. Inside, the cogs in his brain were working. Are you sure you know where we are going, Itachi? Clearing this fucking forest is not what Samahata was made for. Contrary to what he said, Kisame rather enjoyed hacking up the local flora. It just was not as much fun as hacking up people. He and Itachi were traveling on foot, like civilians, and the fact made him more aggressive than usual. If we are to avoid detection, we have to take an unknown path. Jiraiya the Sannin is nearby, so if we use chakra to jump across treetops, we will never get close to the target without discovery. All our concentration must be focused on hiding our chakra signatures from the Sannin. Itachi replied in a neutral voice as they made their way ever closer to Konoha. Itachi was never one for speaking for any long length of time, Kisame told himself. His quota of words is nearly used up. Kisame grinned at the thought. He was thinking about having a rematch with the green spandex taijutsu specialist from Konoha. For that kick he gave Kisame in his face. His sword swung faster at the thought. Oh 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 oh. Naruto woke up in Yakumo's bed feeling tired and unfocused. The escapade between the couple and Naruto's thoughts on how they were going to leave the village kept him up most of the night. He did have a plan though. And Naruto couldn't believe he was going to say this, he needed to encounter the Akatsuki within the month. Ero Sennin's 6 months were nearly up and Naruto had no intention of going on a 2.5-year training trip with him. That pervert wouldn't teach him anything. He doesn't. The only thing he did in the training trip was tell Naruto he could customize his Rasengan, how to dispel a genjutsu and how to control more of the fox's power. What a waste of time. So Naruto planned on leaving before Jiraiya came back. It was time to begin his master plan. Naruto detached himself from Yakumo's embrace and went into her bathroom to have a shower. As the hot relaxed and warmed his muscles, Naruto knew what he would do today. Yakumo felt uncomfortable without her warm pillow. The lack of that comforting warmth woke her up. Sitting up in the bed, Yakumo wondered what that comforting warmth was when her memories of the night before rushed back to her. Her head fell back into the pillow, brown hair landing in a halo, framing her blushing face. She heard the shower going and blushed, thinking perverted thoughts about Naruto in the shower. She remembered Naruto telling her that he had a plan and personally she couldn't wait. Naruto had confirmed that Kurenai-sensei and forgotten about her after asking for forgiveness. She was rumored to be involved with Asuma Sarutobi, and Yakumo couldn't wait to get her revenge. Naruto's love for her showed her how someone cared for another. After comparing how Naruto-kun and Kurenai treated her, Yakumo realized that Kurenai was only worried about herself and the village. The same village that tried to get her Naruto-kun killed. Is still trying. Hurry Naruto-kun, hurry. Oh 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 oh. Anko woke up with splitting headache and a bright light in her eyes. She blinked multiple times, trying to see where she was. But, aside from the light in her eyes, there was only darkness. Hello Anko, said a familiar, creepy voice. Ibiki, what's going on? Where am I? You are charged with the attempted assassination of a ninja of Konoha, Naruto Uzumaki. What do you plead? I'm warning you, Anko. Do not make me wait. Anko shivered. I plead. Oh 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 oh. After kissing Yakumo on the cheek, Naruto went downstairs to make them both breakfast. Yes, he did know how to cook. Even though he lived off ramen for most of his life, he usually couldn't afford proper food in the past. Naruto started up the gas stove and brought some bacon and eggs out of the fridge. Chucking on some vegetable oil into 2 pans, Naruto started cooking. Whistling merrily, he shouted up the stairs, breakfast. Yakumo came running down the stairs. Amazing what a walk and a little love had done for her condition. There was no way she would ever do taijutsu, but she could run. A long way from struggling to stand after sitting on a chair. Well, my fine princess, breakfast is served. Naruto did a mock bow at the doorway which sent Yakumo into giggling fits. Figuring she would play around, she responded. My handsome price, did you enjoy the entertainment last night? Naruto blushed before kissing her, his hand squeezing her ass. She blushed in the kiss and mock slapped him. Naruto broke the kiss, grinning like a maniac before pulling out a chair for Yakumo to sit on. Breakfast was a jolly affair when Yakumo finally worked up the courage to ask him what he had planned to get them out of the Leaf Village. Naruto grinned. It's a surprise. The bonus about living with Yakumo, near limitless writing and painting material. And Naruto needed the letters to be written. This was the first step in cutting his ties. Of course, for the most important part of the plan, the getaway, Naruto needed the Akatsuki. So Naruto slaved away in one of the other bedrooms for privacy from Yakumo. Naruto grinned. The secrecy must be driving her crazy. Now, a letter to Fuzzy Brows. Naruto didn't come out of the room until late afternoon. He was suffering from mild withdrawal symptoms due to the time without ramen. Yakumo was suffering the same thing, due to the time without Naruto. They both decided to go out and have dinner at Ichiraku Ramen, knowing that in a few days they would leave for good. After dinner, Naruto went to the post office to buy stamps and envelopes. He wouldn't post them yet, only on the morning before they left. He would have enjoyed seeing their reactions, but sadly he couldn't. Naruto retired early with Yakumo, collapsing onto the bed together. Naruto was emotionally drained from writing the letters, all saying goodbye to his friends and family. But if he was going to wipe out the council and remake Konoha, he needed to be on the other side. And Yakumo supported him all the way. She wanted revenge on Asuma for stealing Kurenai and Kurenai for leaving her behind. Naruto had told her at dinner about Hinata's relationship with Kurenai, but Yakumo could never blame her after Naruto told Yakumo Hinata's life story. She was just sorry she had to kill Hinata's mother figure. Maybe she would just kill Asuma, and let Kurenai deal with the loss of a loved one, just like what she had done to her. In fact, the more Yakumo thought about it, the more she liked this idea. She fell asleep smiling against Naruto's chest. Oh 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 oh. Kurenai sneezed against Asuma's chest. Asuma felt a chill running down his spine before he shook it off as nothing. Oh 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 oh. Today was a big day for Naruto. He was figuring out what art he wanted to do. It needed to be something creative, something that could be used in battle. But if that's what he wanted, then he needed to steal the Forbidden Scroll, again. Naruto kissed Yakumo on the forehead and she snuggled in closer into Naruto's chest. Laughing at her antics, Naruto went downstairs to make them breakfast, instant ramen today. After a quick breakfast alone, he left a note for Yakumo and went to visit the library. Oh 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 oh. Naruto ran into the library, panting. The clerk looked like he was about to kick Naruto out after seeing who he was. One look at Naruto's headband though and the clerk turned back to his paperwork. Mumbling profanities about Naruto. Naruto grinned. It was testament to how much he loathed bookwork that the clerk didn't know Naruto had become a ninja after all this time. Naruto didn't even hear the clerk as he began looking in the shinobi section for scrolls and books on seals. Of course, the shinobi section was huge, so after 10 minutes of frustration, Naruto used shadow clones to help him search and study. Seals were highly complicated and would take far more than 1 week to learn, even with shadow clones. But Naruto only needed the basics down before leaving. 2 hours later, Naruto dispelled all of his clones and gasped when the knowledge flooded back into his brain. Naruto gathered any notes his clones had made and folded them into his pockets. After taking a 2-minute break, Naruto made 200 shadow clones and sent half of them to search for books and scrolls on sculpting, while the other half was sent to find the same things on weapon forging. His clones found very little on either in the shinobi section, so Naruto sent his clones to the civilian section. They hit the jackpot with arts and crafts. Whilst Naruto's clones slaved away making notes, Naruto was studying the notes his clones had made on making seals. A couple of hours passed before it was time for lunch. He had promised Yakumo to spend some time with her at lunch and for the rest of the day. This was the main reason his clones were making notes, for his clones to nail the subjects down while he spent some time with Yakumo. Oh 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 oh. Ichiraku ramen for lunch. So are you going to tell me what you're planning, Naruto-kun? I don't like being kept in the dark. Sorry, Yakumo-chan. It's top secret. If we pull it off, it'll be the crime and getaway of the century. We'll be famous, and even better, we will have our revenge in due time. However, tonight I want to ask you on a date. Yakumo blushed. After all we've done, you want to still go on a date? Naruto grinned foxily. Of course, Yakumo-chan. I want to go on proper date with my girlfriend. Yakumo and Naruto's faces took on new shades of red. Girlfriend? I'd like that, being Naruto's girlfriend. Okay Naruto-kun, but no Ichiraku ramen. She glared at him, never mind the fact that she was saying this inside the said restaurant. Ayame giggled at the scene and felt a slight pang of jealousy. Why couldn't she have a man like Naruto? And I'm not paying, Yakumo said after she finished her ramen. Okay Yakumo-chan. What? Oh. I wonder what Yakumo-chan is going to be wearing for our date. It's a formal date, I think. Naruto knew his hair would resist any combing or gel. He settled for removing his headband and putting the spikes of his hair that the headband covered in front of his face in an attempt to look more mysterious. He was wearing a white, skin-tight shirt with under a black suit. There was an orange handkerchief in his front pocket with the top 2 buttons of his white shirt undone, hiding the first's necklace. Yes, the Land of Waves had finally coughed up the money of the A-rank mission Team 7 had completed all those months before. These were his fanciest clones and Naruto could only enter the store with a henge. Yakumo-chan, are you ready? Naruto called up the stairs. 10 seconds Naruto-kun. Naruto scoffed. He would never understand the tradition of waiting at the stairs for his date to get ready. In fact, there were many traditions with the opposite that neither he nor Yakumo understood or did. It was a new experience for both of them and proof of their fucked up upbringings in the Leaf Village. True to her word, 10 seconds later and beautiful goddess that could not be 12-year-old Yakumo-chan walked down the stairs. Naruto's breath caught. Using her small, lithe figure, Yakumo was wearing a body-hugging, black cocktail dress that ended 2 inches above her knees. A sequined spiral of gold stayed at the neckline of her dress and gently spiraled around her body until it became the bottom hem of Yakumo's dress. The dress had room for future growth and Yakumo looked stunning. The golden spiral brought out the gold in her brown eyes and matched her 2 hairpins on the left side of her hair. A face, so often frowning, was smiling as she looked Naruto over as well. Giggle, you clean up nice, Naruto-kun. Naruto blinked, then grinned foxily. Who are you and what have you done with Yakumo-chan? You are too pretty to be human. Yakumo blushed again. Spending time around Naruto had rubbed off on her and they now had fun, almost arguments all the time. Flattery will get you nowhere, Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned as she walked down the last of the steps and he took her arm. But it will get me a date with the most beautiful girl in the world. Naruto took Yakumo to dinner at a restaurant called the Flaming Leaf. Known for its expensive tastes and piping hot curries, it was a favorite of those with exotic or expensive tastes. Why here, Naruto-kun? Yakumo inquired. Yakumo-hime, you and I have missed out on so much in our lives. I thought an adventure with our taste buds will be good for both of us, before we leave this village. Yakumo blushed and held him tighter as he told the man at the counter of their reservation. Asking what it was under, Naruto replied, Kurama, without breaking a stride. Yakumo blushed even harder. Naruto was spoiling her and calling her a princess. They had a table for 2 ready at the corner of the restaurant, giving them privacy from the other guests. If the waiters and guests were surprised at the 2 12-year-olds, they were very good at hiding it. While Naruto and Yakumo walked to their seats, Naruto spotted Team 10 at another table, sitting on benches. It was unsurprising since Choji's nature would make him want to experience all the foods of the world. No doubt about it, when Naruto saw Choji, he was stuffing his face with all sorts of beef curry. Ino stared at the human vacuum known as Choji. The fat, don't let him hear you call him that. Akamichi seemed to be able to eat that red-hot curry with no side effects. Though after eating those 3 pills whilst trying to retrieve Sasuke probably had given him this resistance, Ino mused. Ino was not a deep thinker, but she did understand the side effects of those pills. Is that Naruto? Ino said, talking over Choji's eating and Asuma's conversation with Shikamaru. Everyone turned to look and Ino's breath caught in her throat. There was Naruto, looking handsome, wearing a black suit with a white shirt, headband gone. The hair it usually covered was now sticking forward slightly, leaving his eyes shrouded in shadows. There was that evil brown-haired girl talking to him. The one that had trapped Ino in that horrible genjutsu that only a passing Kurenai could release her from. Their postures screamed, date. And they both seemed to be enjoying each other's company. The girl's dress was the envy of Ino, who knew such a dress should have been hers. She had in fact chosen it for the girl, as it was far too expensive for Ino to buy. And now she looks gorgeous and she's going out with Naruto. Ino blinked as a strange thought entered her mind. Could Naruto be a gold digger? Oh 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 oh. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, nearly 1,000 Narutos were studying from their notes, all inside the library. Naruto had given them nearly all his chakra, allowing the ones that learnt something to create another shadow clone before dispelling itself to give its knowledge to Naruto. As such, Naruto was getting a near constant stream of new knowledge. When the notes were mastered, the clones turned to Yakumo's and the village's library's books for more knowledge. Oh 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 oh. At a secret council meeting, Ibiki had just finished giving his report on the interrogation of Anko to the council. The demon has become far too cunning, like the fox it is. One prominent member of the civilian council shouted. There was a general murmur of agreement. What do you suggest we do about it? Another member asked. Hiyashi Hyuga was not a patient man and held no sympathy for a failed mission. Just as the demon fox has captured my disowned daughter's heart, we must attack his. I will go myself and kill the girl Yakumo. Her genjutsu will be no match for the esteemed Byakugan. There was a further chorus of agreement from the council. None of them understood Yakumo's true power, or Naruto's plan which would become active tomorrow. Oh 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 oh. At the flaming leaf. So, Naruto, what have you been doing today? Yakumo was genuinely interested. They were talking while they waited for their food. Reading up on my art, which no I won't tell you about. It's still in its infancy, but I promise you that it'll be like nothing you've ever seen before. However, my plan starts tomorrow morning and I need you for that. So, I will tell you the first part of my plan. Please Naruto-kun, tell me. Our lovely Miss Assassin will probably be reporting in right now to the council. After going against the Hokage, the meeting will be in secret. Yakumo scowled at the thought of the assassin hurting her Naruto-kun. Continue Naruto-kun. Well, now they are going to send someone even better, or they are going to come after you. They now know about my shadow clone's techniques and so will be wary of coming after me. And not many are better than Anko. They probably will have someone who they think can get to you, getting past your illusions. Kurenai-sensei. That would be what I would do. Except, one thing I've learned about the council is to expect the unexpected even if the unexpected is just plain stupid. Naruto grinned at this and Yakumo giggled. So who then? Naruto-kun. I honestly don't know. Kurenai is a definite no because she feels too guilty about what she did to you, or at least she did. However, my plan is. They had to stop when the food arrived. Butter chicken for Naruto, at least, that's what it was called on the menu. Yakumo looked like she had a cross between a veggie stir-fry and some rice and chicken curry. The menu said it was mild but neither of them trusted the menu. Naruto could not for the life of him see any butter with the chicken, only rice and some strange orange sauce. Yakumo knew that mild was all a matter of opinion. They did want an adventure with their taste buds though, so sending a teasing smile to each other they dug in. When they finished their dinner, Naruto continued. My plan needs you to create a massive genjutsu like last time. The secondary reasons for me sending you out and about the village all this time was to give you a mental picture of the village. Because now you must not create a genjutsu of a ruined leaf village, you must create one of a normal leaf village. Why? Yakumo asked, not the least bit miffed about being manipulated. Naruto obviously needed Yakumo to experience life in the village without suspicion, even from Yakumo herself. That would give her the most powerful and accurate genjutsu. Because their next assassination will succeed. And we will disappear. You've given this a lot of thought. Of course, Yakumo Harem. We need to get some rest tonight. That means no fooling around. Yakumo pouted cutely. Fine, but it'll take most of the morning before the illusion is in place and we can't leave the house till then. Naruto nodded, stood up and held out his hand. Yakumo took it elegantly and as Naruto helped her up, he left the money on the table, which surprisingly didn't break his bank, and left for the mansion. That night they held each other and cuddled, thinking over their perfect dinner date. Oh 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 oh. Hiashi Hyuga first traveled to the demon boy's house, thinking the two demons might stay there. He shuddered at the thought of what those two might be doing. There were some things on in this world that was never meant to see the light of day. Finding the demon's apartment long since abandoned with his Byakugan, Hiashi cursed. This meant they were staying at the mansion, which had far better defenses. Hiashi traveled there anyway, avoiding alarms with the all-seeing Byakugan. He arrived at the mansion with no trouble to find it in lockdown. Hiashi scanned the mansion with his Byakugan and shuddered at what he saw. Naruto and Yakumo, no, the demon and the demoness, in bed, together. Kami, they've started mating already. I have to report this to the council before the secret meeting finishes. Oh 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 oh. The sun kissed the horizon on this the day of reckoning. Yakumo was up early, painting the first of many on her large canvas with her palette knife. This one showed a perfectly normal, crowded market, just like she had seen when she was there. Naruto yawned lazily and sat up from bed, revealing his bare chest. He smiled when he saw his love working diligently on her art. It made him think of his art, and his feeling for Yakumo. Yakumo Harem, I love you, Naruto said just loud enough for Yakumo to hear. She dropped her palette knife in shock and wonder. Getting up off her wooden chair, this time without difficulty, she ran to Naruto and embraced him, kissing his neck. Kiss, thank you Naruto-kun, kiss for everything. Yakumo moved her lips to his. He still gasped when he felt the sensation of her tongue in his mouth. Warm and wet, she moaned into his mouth when Naruto's arms took both her legs off the floor and pulled them up to rest on top of the blankets in front of him. His tongue invaded her mouth and she moaned at this too, her legs wrapping around his waist as he tightened his grip on her rear, pulling her ever tighter against him. She was only wearing a thin, white nightgown with no panties. The bottom was pulled up from around her legs as his tongue massaged hers in her mouth. She felt her nipples harden, the small brown area around them contrasting to the milky white around it. Yakumo's gown was in danger of being undone when Naruto finally pulled away from the kiss. Not now Yakumo Harem. Not in this village where we are always in danger. I'll make us breakfast, K. Yakumo pouted but nodded and got off the bed as Naruto removed himself from her legs. Giving her one last kiss, Naruto headed downstairs. Just as he got into the kitchen, one of Naruto's silent alarms rang, telling him that just like last night, there was an intruder in the grounds. Naruto grinned. The mansion was still in lockdown, so whoever the new assassin was, he would have to wait. And as soon as Yakumo finished her paintings, it would be too late. Smiling as he made breakfast, this time scrambled eggs on toast, Naruto got out a tray and went back into the bedroom to serve Yakumo her breakfast. Oh 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 oh. Yakumo finally finished her new painting of the Hokage Tower, looking just like it always did. Her palette knife got some yellow paint and applied it to the paint of the tower. A good artist always completed the background first. Today was going to be a bright, sunny day if Yakumo had anything to say about it. Meanwhile, Naruto made 500 shadow clones and sent them out of the house to continue Naruto's work in the Leaf Village's library, as well as making notes from the book in Yakumo's library. He made the clones inside the house to see if the assassin was half decent. If he was, then he would not go after the shadow clones because Naruto was going to stay right here until Yakumo completed her genjutsu. Naruto set Yakumo's breakfast by her feet. He was content to just watch Yakumo paint while he ate his breakfast. Oh 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 oh. The demon was obviously trying to fool the great Byakugan by creating all those shadow clones. It never took into account that Hiashi could see through walls and see that Naruto was staying in the mansion, safe. Hiashi scoffed at the obvious attempt to get rid of him. You'll have to try better than that demon. Oh 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 oh. It was done. Yakumo's genjutsu was finally complete. She concentrated on the paintings and began to mold her chakra into the genjutsu. The process took less than a second, and using the painting as a visual aid meant the jutsu required no hand signs. The citizens of Konoha were now under the effects of Yakumo's genjutsu, and nothing would be as it seems. Yakumo's maleficent grin had returned and Naruto shared it. They turned around and saw their phantoms extract themselves from them and get on with life. They looked at their phantoms, then at each other and began laughing. The real Naruto and Yakumo were now invisible. What are we doing now, Naruto? Yakumo asked after finishing her breakfast. She was keen to hear about the next step in Naruto's master plan. Orochimaru-sama. Success with Subject 37. Kabuto ran into Orochimaru's throne room like his pants were on fire. They had relatively few successes with these large-scale experiments, so when they did, they demanded Orochimaru's personal attention. Kukuku Kabuto. Led they way. Orochimaru stood up fluidly from his throne and followed Kabuto out of the room. The underground catacombs that Orochimaru had found here had been hollowed out and sandpapered smooth. This was his newest hideout and as such didn't have the tiled floors or the sickly smooth walls yet, but in a year or two it would. What it did have above was a flat, featureless plain where the only notable feature was a river a mile or two to the east. Perfect for training Sasuke to fight on coverless terrain. And whilst Sasuke was training on the surface, Orochimaru could experiment below. Subject 37 has the implanted Kekkei Genkai of Kimimaro, Orochimaru-sama. It was obtained from a bone sample on the field. If we could place the child in quarantine so that he doesn't contract the disease. I know Kabuto. Kabuto, I'm counting on you. Once I have the Sharingan, the only techniques I will not have will be other Kekkei Genkai. The Sharingan, Shikatsumyaku, Corpse Bone Pulse, and the Mokuden are what I'm after. A pity that all 60 of my Mokuden experiments died, wink wink. Then I would have had that ability from the start and only aged 12 more years before possessing him. If Kimimaro hadn't gotten sick, I would have had him too, 6 years later. And if the Sound 4 had kept on schedule, one would have the Sharingan by now and be the strongest ninja in the world. 21 years. Kabuto. There was a lengthy break as both parties though about what Orochimaru had said. Fate really hated him, but their fortune was soon about to change. Oh 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 oh. Inside the Fire Country, Kisame and Itachi walked out of the forest that was bordering the Fire Country, arriving at a grassy clearing about 5 days of non-ninja travel inside the border. The next forest they would encounter would be the forest bordering the Hidden Leaf Village. Itachi nodded once and they began to pick up the pace. They had been able to avoid Jiraiya and his spy network by traveling like civilians through an unmarked trail in the forest. They could now speed up and jump through the clearings until they neared the Leaf Village. For once Kisame had nothing to say, he was just relieved that he could rest his arms after cutting through that monstrosity known as a forest. A forest? Huh. It was a fucking jungle. Oh 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 oh. Konoha. The next part of my plan, Yakumo-chan, is the heist. Well, several heists. I need to steal the Forbidden Scroll, again and. You stole the Forbidden Scroll. Yakumo was looking at Naruto with stars in her eyes. Oh Kami, she's becoming one of them. Oh 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 oh. Ino and Sakura stopped talking and looked at each other. My fangirl senses are tingling. Sasuke-kun. Hinata stopped training with Kiba and Shino. Naruto-kun. Oh 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 oh. After Naruto finished his story about the theft of the Forbidden Scroll, he was tackled by Yakumo down onto the tile floor. Oh Naruto-kun, I never knew, Yakumo said, and then gave him the biggest kiss and looked him straight in the eyes. She was tearing up and Naruto didn't know why. What did I say? Naruto was honestly confused. Then he realized. It was Mizuki who told him about the demon fox. It was Mizuki who nearly killed him. And in his retelling he had let slip that he was a Jinchuriki. The Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, me and my big mouth. Naruto winced at the thought. If Naruto had let this fact slip to any other person, he would have been scared of rejection. But he knew about and had seen Yakumo's Edo demon and still loved her. And now Yakumo knew about his demon, but would she still love him? From the tears, kiss and hug, the answer was a unanimous yes. But he had to make sure. Haim, do you still love me? Knowing what I am, Yakumo gasped. What brought this on? What made Naruto-kun feel this insecure? This village. It's their fault somehow. That's what this is all about. He wants revenge for what they did to him. For what they did to me. I had Kurenai-sensei and then she betrayed me, leaving me all alone. He had no one from the moment he was born. Was this the first assassination attempt? Was this the final straw? Or has it been happening for a long time? I have to find out. Naruto-kun, was this the first assassination attempt? Yakumo stopped crying and watched him, deadly serious. The serious mood was kind of ruined with her straddling him. Naruto leaned up and kissed Yakumo, trying to distract her. When this didn't work, Naruto broke away from the kiss and wordlessly shook his head. Naruto-kun, how many? I will kill them all for hurting my boyfriend. You can't, Yakumo. They are too powerful, too high up in the village. But if we become missing ninja, we can attack those responsible without worrying about the consequences inside the village. I know my plan is a little flawed, but give me a little time. Yakumo silenced him with a well-timed kiss. To her surprise, Naruto pulled away and stood up, laughing. Yakumo, don't you want to know my plan? You were so keen before. Yakumo had the decency to blush as she had forgotten. After all, dropping a bomb like the Kyuubi was not something you just brush off. She apologized and promised that she wouldn't interrupt him again. Naruto nodded and began again. Right, the heists. Now since we are leaving without any sensei, we need to leave with jutsu scrolls so we can get stronger ourselves. I'm currently studying blood seals in a hope that when we steal the forbidden scroll as well as other jutsu scrolls, we can seal the scrolls in them for security. That's the plan anyway. Let me guess. My genjutsu has taken care of the people, but it won't take care of the security seals. And you have a plan for that too? Naruto laughed. Shadow clones and luck. Other than that, I'm just going to wing it. Orochimaru's lair. Subject 37's room. Kabuto and Orochimaru examined the subject through a one-way glass wall. 10 years old, the minimum age needed to survive the curse mark. All right. Kukuku. Kabuto. My lord, may I ask you which mark you intend to give her? Kabuto pushed his glasses back onto his nose after he asked. Kukuku Kabuto. Kimimaro survived the earth curse mark. I will give the subject the same one. Does she have a name? No, Orochimaru-sama. Orochimaru nodded and, still chuckling creepily, walked into the room through a door hidden by genjutsu. The subject backed away into a corner, shivering from fear and cold. Orochimaru let out a burst of killing intent, freezing her in place. His neck extended and he bit her in the notch between her two collarbones. She screamed as the black mark formed by the bite. It was the earth curse mark. Orochimaru's neck returned to normal and he wiped his mouth while standing up. Now don't die on me. He had a maleficent grin as he exited the room. Monitor her, he ordered Kabuto as he walked past. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto unsealed his medical and monitoring equipment. Oh 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 oh. Naruto was standing outside the Hokage's office, taking deep breaths. He had faith in Yakumo's genjutsu skill, however Grandma Tsunade was a Sanin. There was always that flicker of doubt. If Naruto told someone that he was going to do the greatest crime of the century at 11 feet o'clock in the morning with the Hokage in the same room, the person would call him mad. Maybe he was, at the village. Okay, Naruto. Calm down. Deep breaths. Just slowly open the door. The door creaked open and a shadow fell across the doorway. Naruto gasped and jumped back just as an angry Tsunade bowled through the door. Her eyes looked straight at Naruto but didn't see him. Naruto sighed and Tsunade looked quizzically at his hiding place. She put her hands together and said, Kai. Naruto froze, not daring to breath, and waited with bated breath to see if Yakumo's genjutsu held. Apparently it did, and Tsunade turned away and started shouting something along the lines of, Shizune. Give me my sake back. Naruto chuckled as she charged away from his hiding place with all the grace of a buffalo. He snuck inside Tsunade's office before the doors could close. Naruto sighed and did the hind sign for the shadow clone jutsu, and 5 clones appeared. Of course Shizune hadn't taken Tsunade's sake, this time. It was a certain inconsistency in Yakumo's genjutsu. The pervert Jiraiya wasn't here yet, but just in case he arrived early, Yakumo made the women's hot springs extra populated today. Now, where was that switch? Click. Got it. One of Naruto's shadow clones flicked the switch under Tsunade's desk and the wall to the right of the office disappeared. It was a high-level genjutsu security seal that could only be dispelled with the switch. The seal went so far as to make the genjutsu tangible. Naruto had found the switch previously. He had hoped that Tsunade was too lazy to change it. If not, he had 5 shadow clones to help him look. The switch itself was tiny and portable, changing its hiding place usually with every Hokage. Naruto ran through the doorway and it was like Christmas. The forbidden scroll was in a glass box with its top wide open. Naruto knew that after he had stolen the forbidden scroll, Grandma Tsunade would have at least added some new traps. One of Naruto's shadow clones walked over and lifted the scroll from its case. A kunai fire from the roof behind the clone. It was a natural blind spot unless you knew it was there. It drilled through the clone's head and with a poof the clone disappeared. But not before another clone used a substitution to replace itself with the dropping forbidden scroll. The newly appeared clone caught the flying kunai knife before it cut another string and obviously trigger another trap. Naruto sighed as his clone examined the kunai before it dispersed, dropping the kunai. When Naruto got the memories, he took on a thoughtful pose, hands behind his head, one hand holding the forbidden scroll. The kunai had the same seal on it as Asuma's trench knives. No doubt Asuma would come here and charge the kunai with wind chakra. It was made to slice straight through a person's head and still trigger a different trap. It didn't matter whether they were a clone or not. Very clever Asuma and Tsunade, Naruto thought as he left through the window. It was time to post those letters. Oh 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 oh. Naruto arrived back at the mansion at noon, panting slightly from the use of chakra. If Naruto was panting, then most genin would have collapsed from chakra exhaustion. All those clones he had sent out in the morning had dispersed and Naruto had to create more clones to take any notes and books the clones had left in the library and seal them in blood storage seals. He had only just learned blood seals and he had to create thousands of shadow clones for the job. Then Naruto had to use his chakra to run all over the village, posting his letters. Why did he need stamps and envelopes? To make them search the post office for any sign of him. They would ask the people in charge when they had seen him and it would waste time. Any small delay was worth it. It had all worked out in the end. Naruto arrived at the mansion to be greeted by a made-up pack stuffed with scrolls. His clones had obviously packed his bags and were now all hiding throughout the village as distractions, with half of them hedged into Yakumo. Yakumo came out of the mansion wearing her traditional outfit and carrying all of their combined finances and food and scrolls in her pack. Yakumo came prepared for Naruto's exhausted condition and tossed him a soldier pill. Naruto thanked her and ate the pill. So now what? Yakumo asked Naruto with a hint of concern. She was still largely in the dark. Now I trigger the paper bombs and we get out of here. Yakumo cheered and squealed as Naruto lifted her up bridal style. Their packs were tiny and light thanks to the blood storage scrolls. Even so, Naruto drew on half a tail of the Kyuubi's chakra for an extra boost of speed. His eyes became red and his pupils became slits. His whisker marks became more pronounced. Naruto didn't like doing this, but they needed to get away as fast as possible. Once Yakumo was secure with her arms around Naruto's neck, he charged towards the mansion. Naruto jumped towards the mansion wall and spun around, landing feet first against it. He bent his legs and spring-boarded off the wall. He hit the ground running and ran as fast as he could, carrying Yakumo and their packs towards the exit of the Leaf Village. A minute later, the delay on the paper bombs ran out and the bombs caught fire. Kurenai and Asuma's houses had the paper bombs on their rooftops. The bombs exploded a few seconds later, smashing windows, leveling walls. However, the damage to the people inside these two buildings was minimal. The pair of Chunin guarding the wall turned in horror and watched the explosions. As such, they missed the red and black blur speed out the Leaf Village. Lee and Guy were at Lee's dojo, sparring. They had felt something odd today, almost like deja vu. Guy-sensei, I am feeling particularly unyouthful today. No, my youthful student. I feel it too. We must do 5,000 push-ups with our fingers to get rid of this feeling. Right, Gia-sensei? And if I can't do that, I will run 100 times around the village on my hands. This was about the time that the two buildings were leveled by the explosions. Lee and Guy stopped training and took up a serious look. They wordlessly disappeared to investigate. It was terrible. Fire had spread to other building and the houses of Kurenai and Asuma were in pieces. Only a few doorways and clinging bits of wall remained upright. However, the two who were obviously targeted stood outside, unharmed and looking pissed off. The Hokage was there and supervising the Chunin who were using sweetened techniques to quench the fires. Guy walked towards the Hokage, followed closely by Lee, and asked her what happened. I'm not sure. The Anbu have been alerted to a possible security breach in the village and the whole place is sealed up tighter than the Forbidden Scroll. Tsunade stopped. Shit. Tsunade shouted and charged back to the Hokage tower. Guy told Lee to follow and help her while he sorted out things with Asuma and Kurenai. Lee took off after her. 2 hours later, Tsunade called an emergency Jonin meeting with Team Guy and the Rookie 9. What disturbed her was that Naruto never arrived. That was her first inclination as to what had happened. Someone, probably Itachi again, had not just settled for little old Naruto anymore. He had obviously used his Sharingan to hypnotize Naruto into stealing the Forbidden Scroll again. Konoha's S-class criminal Uchiha was hunting for new jutsus and now had Naruto. When Tsunade shared this theory with her trusted ninja, saying they were pissed would be an understatement. Kiba was nearly foaming in the mouth after all they had done together and he still wanted a rematch. Lee complained about the unyouthfulness of their enemies while Tenten tried her best not to strangle him. This was around this time that things started becoming very strange. 1.5 hours ago. Yakumo was at her limit. They were as far away as she could be without releasing the genjutsu. Naruto set her down and the red chakra faded. Naruto collapsed on the ground, snoring. Yakumo found the whole thing deeply amusing and she laughed until tears of joy came. They were free, finally. Free to live and plan and love each other. But Yakumo wondered why he had stopped here. It was almost as if he wanted her to keep the genjutsu going. But why? And why stop now and give into a minor case of chakra exhaustion when they could be halfway out of the fire country before stopping? Yakumo felt a scratching sensation between her and looked down. There was a note, rolled up and pushed between her beasts. Her beasts weren't big enough to touch together, yet, but the note seemed recently rolled because it was trying to unroll. Yakumo blushed and removed the note. On it were instructions from Naruto. Hey Harem, if you're reading this then we are at the limit of your genjutsu and I'm out for a little while. It's time for us to have a little fun. Yakumo blushed as she was invaded with perverted thoughts again, with Konoha. Please create a new genjutsu of the nine-tailed fox attacking the village. When the painting is finished wake me up before activating the genjutsu and I'll explain the rest. 10 minutes ago, Yakumo pinched Naruto's nose and woke him up. His upper body launched upwards and he nearly head-butted Yakumo in an attempt to get rid of the fingers closing his airways. Once the near injury was avoided, Naruto saw Yakumo's painting. It showed a dark sky above the village lit with the light of two flaming houses. Naruto realized that those were the two houses he had used the paper bombs on. When Naruto looked back at the village, he saw smoke but no fire. On the painting the Kyuubi stood in all its glory, stomping houses just behind the flaming pair, its mouth open and bearing down on the Hokage tower. Naruto smiled. It was perfect. Yakumo saw him look and was confused. She could keep the current genjutsu going from here, but she'd have to be a lot closer to cast the genjutsu. Also, as vast as her powers were, even she couldn't recreate the Kyuubi no Kitsune. She was about to voice these concerns when Naruto held up his hand. Don't worry Yakumo. Trust me, hell trust the Kyuubi, he wants this to work as much as we do. Yakumo blinked. What are you planning Naruto? The Kyuubi wants this plan to succeed too. What are you planning? Okay Naruto. Just tell me what to do. Naruto nodded and crossed his legs, gesturing for the painting to be brought over to him. Yakumo was not one to be ordered around, but she felt the Kyuubi's chakra again and so complied. Call it a morbid fascination to see what would happen next. She laid the painting on the ground in front of Naruto, who was now supporting a glowing red tail. His features took on the fox appearance and he told her to activate the genjutsu. She wasn't going to argue, she was actually a little intimidated when he was like this. But there was no way she had enough chakra. Yakumo figured it out. Without hesitation she did the hand signs and activated her technique, call out the name of the first human genjutsu to ever use the Kyuubi's chakra.